Well, let's talk a bit more then about that upcoming NATO summit. Kethevane Gorjestani, our international affairs editor, is with me. And Kethevane, just a short while ago today, we've heard from the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. What is he saying about the priorities going into the summit?
Well, look, he laid out a little bit what the NATO allies were going to talk about. And I think it was very clear that who this summit was for, if you will, because Donald Trump once again is going to be really sort of the man that determines a little bit what the focus is on. And clearly for NATO members beside the United States, the idea is to try to avoid any major issues with the U.S. president, who has once again repeated how NATO allies are not doing their fair share. This idea that, you know, the United States is being taken advantage of by the others. So the message of Mark Rutte was sort of trying to counter that. He talked about this idea that allies are better and stronger together, maintaining the unity of the NATO alliance, but also focusing on what he called the historic commitments that were made just last year at the NATO summit in The Hague. That's, of course, talking about the defense spending. We know that Donald Trump was the one who pushed those NATO allies, especially the Europeans, to commit to reaching 5% of defense spending by 2035. Mark Rutte saying that it was because and thanks to Donald Trump's leadership that the Europeans committed to that. And he also insisted that there had been incredible progress made. So this idea that they're trying to put their best face forward to show the U.S. president that they have taken into account the criticism that he has put their way. So a way to appease the U.S. president. That's for sort of the situation overall and what the NATO alliance looks like in the coming years. But of course, he also talked about the importance of continuing the support for Ukraine, saying that it was very important that Ukraine gets what it needs. And so that issue specifically is also going to be very important in the summit.
Okay, well, let's talk a bit more then about Ukraine, because Volodymyr Zelensky this week warning that really his country now is running low on those key air defenses.
Absolutely. And this strike overnight, of course, once again, sort of laying bare this idea that, yes, while the Ukrainians are doing well on the battlefield, containing Russian advances, when it comes to air attacks, they are starting to struggle, especially when it comes to ballistic missile interceptors. And that is going to be one of the most concrete elements that the Ukrainians are going to push for during this NATO summit. We know that Zelensky is going to be there. He's going to meet a bunch of leaders, including Donald Trump. He had a call with the U.S. president over the weekend. Vladimir Putin had a call with the U.S. president over the weekend, too. And just moments ago, Donald Trump was talking about how a possible resolution to this war was getting closer than what people could realize, and that he had good calls with the two leaders. But that, of course, is going to take some time, even if it is what Donald Trump says it is. But really, this idea of ballistic missile interceptors, that is something that is key for Vladimir Zelensky. And the Europeans, by and large, understand that and realize that this is something that the Ukrainians need. Just to give you an idea, Ukraine says that there are 350 plus drones that came in overnight, more than or nearly 70 missiles, and that almost all of the ballistic missiles they were unable to intercept because they don't have those interceptors. And of course, the interceptors largely are American made. And so they need to get the Americans on board for that. So I think that is going to be the push. And of course, overall, the idea that the NATO alliance needs to continue helping Ukraine. Whether or not the Europeans and other allies can sort of get Donald Trump to their side and convince him that the United States needs to keep supporting Ukraine is another story. But we have seen in the past few weeks and months that Donald Trump's tone when it comes to Ukraine has been a little bit more positive, maybe also because he sees that the Ukrainians are holding strong, and we know that Donald Trump likes to be on the side of the strong ones. But of course, that could all change, and the Europeans are really focused on getting the Americans at least to be on their side and on Ukraine's side.